Hace unas semanas atrás, en Londres, tuvo lugar la feria más importante de tecnología educativa de Europa, Learning Technologies. Hoy tenemos el gusto de presentar a uno de sus directores, Donald Taylor. Este espacio es presentado por Kahoot y por Udemy, dos de los sponsor plata del FIAT 2023. Bienvenido.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Shall I share my screen? Okay. I just want to say at the beginning that I'm going to speak in English. So apologies for that. It looks like there's a problem with my slides loading suddenly. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to start.
Donald, do you hear
hello.
Me?
We
cannot see your screen.
Yeah, can you hear me? I don't know what happened. There's a technical glitch. One moment. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Perfect, Donald. Go on.
I'm not sure what happened. I think I had a problem. Okay, muchas gracias a todos. I just want to say, hola a todos, buenas tardes. Lo siento, voy a hablar en inglés. I don't speak any Spanish. I started learning 2 weeks ago. Maybe el próximo año we can speak in Spanish. So I will try to share my slides again now, and let's go through a presentation. I'm going to speak for 20 minutes. I want to share with you some results of some research which I've done into learning trends in the world. And the key thing here is that I want to look at trends in the UK, trends across the world, but most importantly, the trends actually in Spain and in Latin America. Okay. I just want to check, can you see my slides okay before I start pressing any buttons? Yeah? You do see them, okay. Gracias, Josefino. Okay, let me press on. So I want to say thank you to the people who sponsor the survey and my media partners. Great to be able to get views from across the world as to what's happening with learning and learning technologies internationally. I would love to be able to share these views with you now and also in the future. So I always say, this is a 20-minute presentation, but let's have a conversation afterwards. At the end, there are some QR codes. You can download the slides. You can link in with me. Let us keep talking together. 4 things I want to look at. I want to look at the results for 2023 from my survey. I want to look, in the most time I'm going to spend looking at the differences in geography across particularly Spain, Latin America, and the rest of the world. I want to look very briefly at the challenges the world of learning and development faces, and then just one conclusion for us. It's quite a lot of content. You can download the slides at the end. So there's a lot of numbers going to come here, but you can download the slides at the end. So I've done this survey for 10 years. I ask a very simple question in English. It's not translated. What will be hot in workplace learning in the next year? I give people 15 options. People choose 3 of those options, and we had almost 4,000 people from 100 countries answering this year. We have votes from all over the world, but most of the votes are from Europe and the UK. You can see there that half the votes come from the middle of the map. We have good cover in the Americas. Southeast Asia and Africa, not so good. But we have votes from all over the world. It's not evenly distributed. I'm going to show you what the results are for the whole world in just a moment. But first, there's a caveat. You know the distribution of innovation curve. The innovators go through to the laggards. The votes that I get on this survey are not all over this curve. The votes come from one side of the curve, the innovators and the early adopters. That's okay. I want to see, what are those people excited about? Because those people get excited, later the early majority get excited. I want to know which ideas move across the curve. Not all of them do, maybe 10, 20% do. And that's the exciting thing, to see what will be big in the future and what won't be. All right, here are the 15 options that I ask people to choose from, and I have other as well. Could you quickly, I'm going to have a sip of water. Could you quickly have a look in chat and just type in, what do you think will be one thing that will be hot this year? Very quickly, I'm going to sip some water. What do you think will be really hot this year from that list? Now, when I ask this question, AI is always the first answer because it's 2 letters. It's very quick to type. Now, everyone's saying AI. Skills. AI y metaverso. Fedora, Paolo. Everyone is saying AI or IA, which is, I'm guessing, inteligencia artificial. Okay, upskilling, meta. Okay, this is great. Listen, everybody, whatever you write, it may be right. It may be right for you, in your company, in your country, in your context. You could be completely right. I'm going to show you what the world thought, but thank you for giving your answers there. It's really exciting. Here's what the world said. So we had 4,000 people from 100 countries, and this is what they said. So personalización y adaptación, that was down at number 6. Number 1, a lot of people said reskilling. A lot of people said artificial intelligence, and that's number 2. When you look at this table, you can see that there's a number in brackets afterwards. That's where that thing was last year. And that's quite important. We're going to look at that right now. I want to look just at the top of the table and see what the big trends this year are. Thank you for all the answers, by the way. And as I say, this is what the world thinks, but your answer for your context, for your company and your culture, that's what's right for you. Let's look at the top of the table. You can see here that reskilling and upskilling is number 1. It came onto the table 3 years ago, and it has been number 1 for 3 years. So it's obviously very popular. It's actually come down from last year. I want to talk very quickly about this and then move on. Firstly, what does it mean? Reskilling, you get new skills for a different job. Maybe you move sideways. Upskilling, you have your skills and you get more skills for your existing job. Okay. Why is everybody so enthusiastic about this across the world? If you look at the Google Trends report for reskilling and upskilling, you can see the line was pretty flat. It started to pick up in late 2019. Everyone was talking about the need to reskill and upskill because of automation, but there was one point which really triggered everything. The reskilling revolution, that was a report that came out from the World Economic Forum at the beginning of 2020. And when the World Economic Forum brings out a report, everybody else writes a report. You can see there's a big jump on the line there. That just shot up. And then afterwards, everybody was writing about reskilling and upskilling, and people were doing things. But what's very interesting from my survey's point of view is that when I added this to the survey for the first time in 2021, the world agreed that reskilling and upskilling was important. Look, everybody was 13% or 12%, everybody except for South America. Very interestingly, South America was at 9.3%. We'll come back to that in a second. So this was the vote in 2021. The world agreed it was important. And then we come through to this year, 2023. There's much more variation. There's a really big vote in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia in particular. South America is the same at 9.3%. So it's no longer homogenous. The vote has broken up. Some people, particularly North America, are much less excited about it. Okay, let's move on. What else do we have? Artificial intelligence at number 2. Last year, it was number 12. That's a huge jump. That's never happened before. What normally happens over time is that something is hot and exciting, and it becomes less hot over time. Mobile delivery is less hot because, well, it was exciting in 2014 when I started the survey, but now everybody uses it. Artificial intelligence was following the same sort of pattern. It went up, it came down, it bounced a bit, and then in the most recent survey, it jumped up enormously, 4.5%, 10 places on the table. That has never happened before. Why? Well, you only have to think back to last November and December, and you know why. This is Google interests trends in chat GPT, or I should say chat GPT, and you can see nothing happens, and then it takes off like a rocket. And what happened was chat GPT was launched at the end of November. At the beginning of December, I launched my survey, and the interest did not stop. But not everybody in the world agrees equally about the importance of ChatGPT. Look how spread out the votes are. Not so big in North America, really big. This is Turkey and Israel being super interested. In South America, people just don't care. We're going to come back to South America in a minute. The vote was also very spread across the different sectors that people work in. Education, much more concerned about AI and ChatGPT, but AI, than workplace learning and development. Look at that, it's just 6.9%, half of the interest of education. I think if I did the survey today, not back in December, the results would be different. I'd like to look at geography. I'd like to look at how those votes have gone, not for the whole world, but for Spain and South America in particular. So to set the point, generally, I look for patterns in things where it takes place over time with large enough numbers of people. So if I look at Germany and Poland, I can see that their vote for collaborative and social learning for 5 years has been predictably different. Ileana raises a really good point about ChatGPT. So have a look at the chat and please continue the conversation in English or Espanol or anything else. Very good point, thank you. I look for data where I can see a pattern that is strong and takes place over time, like here. So let's see, are there similar patterns in the Spanish and other speaking parts of the world, like in Brazil, which of course is Portuguese speaking? Yes, there are patterns. North America always rates technology higher, and it puts artificial intelligence high, and it always rates collaborative learning lower. South America always rates collaboration higher, and in this case, most recent year for artificial intelligence, put it that really low down, much less important than anything else. So let's look at what's happening with Brazil in particular, which is the biggest country voting in South America. We've got 251 votes from there. How is that different from the rest of the world? Brazil has always voted very high for collaborative and social learning. And personalization was high this year. Okay, Mexico is considered North America for me. North America is from Canada down to the Panama Canal for the purposes of this, and I use the UN guidelines for that, Marcela. I can provide more details. So that's how Brazil has always voted more for collaboration. In contrast, other countries have voted very high for reskilling, upskilling, and artificial intelligence. That doesn't rank for Brazil. Why? I speak to the Brazilians about this every year, and they say it's cultural differences. I try not to put cultural differences in for things, but honestly, I really think they have a point there. I think there's a very strong social feeling in South America generally that doesn't exist possibly in certainly North America and generally in other countries on the survey. And it is something, Brazil's only given large votes for 3 years, but over those 3 years, you can see that it is an absolutely consistent trend. Let's look at Spain and the rest of the world. Spain was less interested in artificial intelligence, which I was surprised by because I know a lot of people doing interesting stuff with AI in Spain. And if you look at Spain in Europe, it's the same actually, their vote for AI, as it is in the UK. Only two countries scored less. Ukraine, that was a special case. They didn't have access to ChatGPT. Ireland scored really low. And that was because they had lots of technical layoffs, lots of unemployment suddenly, and they weren't interested in AI. Just going to check. I've got a raised hand. I'm going to keep talking and keep pressing through. Okay. Looking at Spain versus the rest of the world, then, we can see that in Spain, skills-based talent management is much higher than the rest of the world. And I don't know why that is, but it's possibly to do with the number of companies in Spain doing work in that field. And coaching and mentoring, really, really low. It's the lowest country of all the big countries who are voting. In Spain, the vote for coaching and mentoring was the lowest, and I have no idea. Gabriella, look, please keep your ideas coming in the chat. That's a great idea. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I am giving you the data. I can interpret it a bit. You're the people who understand things more and can interpret it for me. All right, let's compare Spain and Brazil. How do they shape up against each other? Well, the Brazilians we know love collaborative and social learning, and it's not so strong in Spain, despite Spain having a very strong social culture. So that's an interesting difference. And at the same time, the pattern we've seen elsewhere, that reskilling, upskilling is more highly thought of in Spain than it is in Brazil. And yes, the workshops will be starting shortly. And those patterns, as I say, they're not sudden, they're not just this year, they are over time. Artificial intelligence, it might look like there's a big difference, but just consider the trend over time. Both Spain and Brazil have followed exactly the same trend as everybody else, but in Brazil, the interest in AI did not increase this year. It did in Spain, like the rest of the world. Interesting to know why. Maybe it will jump up in Brazil. I ask everybody each year, what's your biggest challenge for this year? And well, I just very quickly, 1,600 people responded. It is very interesting that this year, more people spoke about budget and impact than last year. So the big thing that's a challenge for people in learning and development this year, and this absolutely matches my experience talking to people, the budget, showing the value. Those words were used much more this year than they were used last year. And that's in all languages, because we have like 10 or 12 languages of responses. And interestingly, people engagement skills and any words to do with the pandemic, understandably, used less this year. Just one word to finish with. Sweden has always voted very highly for collaborative learning, but then in 2022, Sweden voted to put it in second place and put reskilling and upskilling with an absolutely massive vote in the first place. And I said to the Swedes, what's happening? Well, they said, Don, it's very simple. Your survey started in December. In August, 3 months earlier, a book came out. The book was called Upskill och Reskill by Per Lager. We do react in learning and development to the latest thing. So my question for you, we won't answer it now, but my question for you is this surge of interest in AI just like a book being published, or is it more fundamental? Is it something that's going to change how you do your work? Personally, I believe that AI is fundamental and will change how we live our lives and do our work in learning and development, but it remains to be seen. You have 2 QR codes there, one to connect with me on LinkedIn or to get my profile, and one to download the slides, because I went through those slides quite quickly. There's lots of numbers. If you want to download them, they are there for you to read. Okay, and we are listo, that's 20 minutes exactly. We are listo, I think, for the rest of the conference.